Here's one tip you need to know to counter every agent you face in your rank games. Let's get right into it. We'll start off with Astra. Astra feels most impressive when stalling out a team's execute with her smokes and gravity well ability that can really bunch up your team and make you all vulnerable. The best way to counter her is by capitalizing on her weakness. Encourage your dive agents, being Jet, Raze, and Neon, to really fly in and make their way past Astra's utility. It'll make it harder for Astra to be able to play off her abilities since she'll have a duelist close by to worry about. This becomes especially effective when you consider she's the type of agent to meditate and zone out for a couple of seconds, as she'll usually be helping her teammates elsewhere on the map. Abusing the Astra is something we've seen repeatedly in pro play, especially on maps like Split, so take what you can from that and copy the pros. Next up we have Breach. With his flashes, stuns, and aftershock, a good Breach can be very annoying to come up against. The best way to counter Breach utility is really just to expect it. You should be playing anti-flash and avoiding tight areas where the stuns are common. By doing so, you may also have the added benefit of facing an enemy who thinks you'll be blinded and stunned, and will have an unpleasant shock when you're staring them right in the eye. Brim is very much an all-or-nothing agent. Since he has non-regenerable abilities, if he uses up his smokes and mollies, he's left with very little to help his team with. So when facing a defending Brimstone, it can be good to throw fakes and to put pressure on multiple areas of the map to encourage him to use up his abilities. When defending against a Brimstone, you should do everything you can to stall the enemy team's rush and force them to rotate after they've already used up their smokes. Moving on to Chamber, he's most difficult to face when they've got an operator in hand ready to shut down an angle. The key here is to really force him out of a position at every opportunity using utility. Your team should take extra care to make sure every angle is clear of a peeking Chamber before committing to a push. If he doesn't get any fair fights, even his teleport won't be enough to save him. Of course, how much respect you give depends on who the Chamber is as well. If you're facing El Diablo himself, your best bet may be to run and hide. So if you want to learn how to play just like him, check out Ye's course over on our website ProGuides.com. In it, he offers tips on how to play your role, how to operate in a team, and how to develop game sense along with many more. Who better to learn from than the best himself? That and more, of course, is available through our $7.99 monthly subscription. Now, moving on to the next agent, being a Sentinel whose abilities can turn offline if suppressed, Cypher is particularly susceptible to a KO knife being thrown at him, as he'll be left parked behind useless utility. If KO isn't an option, then of course agents like Raze and Yoru who can either break or get behind his trips work just as well. But since you can't play 5 agents all at the same time, it's good to know that once Cypher's camera has been broken, he's also particularly weak to contact plays. If you're slowly walking up, there's not a chance you don't hear the loud noise coming from a trip, and it really should never hit anyone. Being an initiator, Fade relies on providing utility for her team to follow up to get any value. It's probably a good idea when facing a Fade to not sit in any close corners or get a teammate to bait and break utility for you if you do. And on the note of breaking utility, make sure you're breaking Fade's reveal whenever you can. It only takes one bullet and your aim can probably handle flicking to it and back again. It's better to face an enemy who isn't preaiming the exact outline of your body beforehand. For Gecko, it's going to be a similar story to Fade. It is vital that you break all of his abilities as soon as you see them. Too many players try to hide from Wingman or Thrash, and sometimes just completely ignore Dizzy, which can really put you and your teammates in a tough spot. A few bullets on your part in exchange for shutting down the enemy initiator's utility sounds like a good trade-off to me. Oh, and even though this may be a habit from other flashes, for the love of Wingman, don't try to turn from Dizzy, it doesn't work. Harbor's abilities can make places feel chaotic and you might not know where to look. Other than spraying down his shield when you can to prevent free access for the enemy, it's often a good idea to play retake and go for spams as executes come in, especially if he's a solo controller. Unlike Brimstone, Astra, and Viper, he doesn't have any post-plant utility, so he will be stuck swinging you if the bomb goes down. Just pick him off when he does and it's a free round secured with no problem. Oh, and if your team really is terrible at retaking, many Harbors aren't perfect in their util, so try and find a ratty gap and punish it. Jet's fast-paced dynamic gameplay makes her the deserving face of Valorant. There are 2 ways a Jet can really dominate a ranked game. It can be through fast, aggressive entries or by setting up with an operator on defense. Both of these can be countered with good utility usage. When facing a Jet that's really making space for her team, we recommend deploying stall utility out after the Jet is already pushed in. It'll isolate Jet from the rest of her team and should give you a fair fight. Alternatively, waiting for the dash in and holding a flash or stun ready can work great too. Against an operator, Jet is the same story as facing a Chamber. Make sure to clear corners with abilities or jump peek before committing if you're unsure a Jet is there. A little caution goes a long way. KO can suppress enemy abilities, making him an incredibly strong agent in Valorant. When combined with his flashes and molly, it's easy to feel helpless when defending or attacking against him. The best way to counter KO is really only to avoid his utility at all costs. If you find a KO doing set knife setups over and over, it's best to stand out of its radius and advance or break it, especially as a sentinel on defense. As for his flashes, play ante. Peek out after you've heard the flash pop and you'll probably get a great timing. And if KO begins his ultimate, you're probably best off playing retake. He wasn't in the S tier on our ultimate tier list for nothing. Killjoy has cemented her place in the current meta with some pretty strong abilities that can be hard to beat. The obvious way to bypass her utility would be by suppressing them with KO, just like with Cypher. But if that isn't an option, then the best course of action is to have your dive agents get past her equipment as fast as possible. Killjoy's primary strength lies in stalling attackers to allow defenders time to rotate. If your Raze, Jett, Omen, or Yoru just ignore that and go in anyway, she'll have a hard time fighting for a site she might just be holding all on her own. Neon's speedy gameplay can sometimes make her difficult to keep up with and catch you and your teammates off guard. Oftentimes, a Neon will run into a site using her wall and stuns in a way that can make it nearly impossible to hold against. The most effective counter for an aggressive Neon is an agent that's pretty much designed for the task. Cypher's tripwires make it impossible for Neon to get anywhere with her sprint or slide abilities. It forces her to slow down and walk her way into a site, meaning those execs are pretty much less potent. If you find yourself without a Cypher, however, throwing any stall utility like a Molly on main after Neon runs is probably your best bet. That way, Neon is vulnerable in the same way as Jett, and her team will either pay a hefty damage tax or leave her out there as a noble sacrifice. Omen's blind and teleports make him a uniquely aggressive controller with a lot of outplay potential. The most difficult of his abilities to counteract is his paranoia, which has the ability to clear out large areas with ease. To get around that, it's important to hold off angles to reposition into the common angles after the paranoia has already been thrown. To add on to that, stepping back into the area Omen's blind is already clear can catch players looking to capitalize on it off guard, and bag you some nice kills when defending on site. Phoenix is a fast-paced agent that is known for securing kills on site entries with his iconic curveball flashes. His flashes are the hardest to turn away from in games, so holding for his entry isn't really an option. The best counter to Phoenix is the same as it is for the other oppressive flashers just like him. Play anti-flash. Wait until you hear the flash go off and then swing into Phoenix. There are a lot of angles to clear when entering a site, so chances are he won't be looking your way and you'll get the perfect timing to pick off their main entry. Like Jett, Raze is one of the primary and most effective dive agents in the game. By double satcheling in, she's able to bypass any stall utility with ease and wreak havoc wherever she pleases. Assuming you're not able to knock her out of the sky with a well-placed headshot like the pros do, it's good to fall back on our tip for facing dive agents in general. Stall the rest of her team with some utility like a slow orb or a molly, and as a bonus, be mindful of where you place your trips and mollies if you're the sentinel player trying to counter her. If your trip or molly is in a spot where Raze players commonly like to blast pack from, don't be surprised if they accidentally destroy all of your utility. Reyna is an agent that relies entirely on her fragging ability to find value, which is why it's important to be confident in your ability to win gunfights if you're picking her. With her ability to overheal, it can be disastrous to let an enemy Reyna get a kill, especially on pistol rounds. So the best course of action is to not give any opposing Reynas a fair fight where you can avoid it. When against Reyna on a pistol round in particular, make sure to double peek or throw out plenty of utility before taking her on to avoid charging her up like some kind of enraged phase in a boss fight. Utility works even better here, as unlike Jett or Chamber, she can't just get back to safety if she's caught overextended. Sage operates as a sentinel and is only effective so long as her wall is able to block off sections of the map, giving her and her teammates some peace of mind and the ability to hold angles elsewhere with more confidence. So really, all you need to do to counter Sage is to break the wall as soon as possible. By breaking her wall as soon as it goes up, Sage is forced to stay where she is to watch for possible aggressors instead of rotating to support her team elsewhere like she might normally do. Remember that a Sage wall is only ever as good as you or your team allow it to be. For Skye, we've got a bit of a niche one. Her Trailblazer ability serves as a drone and can be pretty good at clearing out corners and making life difficult for defenders. However, unlike most other drones, it has a glaring weakness. Just like pigs in real life, Skye's Trailblazer doesn't have the ability to look upwards. So holding a close angle on top of a high vertical box means that you won't be cleared if you're facing a solo Skye initiator. Then all you have to do is play anti-flash and hit your shots for a free round win. Sova is a strong, well-rounded initiator, and a good Sova can make getting any sort of opening pick a nightmare for both attackers and defenders alike. The best way to counter Sova is to minimize the amount of information he gets from his abilities. That means you should break his drone and dart as soon as you see it, unless you're in a situation where you and your team are somehow able to hide from both. Sova being able to see you on site before his drone is broken is usually okay, but if he sees 2 or more teammates on site after he spots you, it can give the other team more information than you might like, and could encourage a rotation or cue a lurker to play more aggressively. So deny info where possible by breaking his abilities as soon as you can. Viper functions as a controller-sentinel hybrid with often devastating effectiveness. The decaying ability of her smokes combined with the damage and vulnerability effect of her molly means that pushing against an entrenched Viper can spell the end for an enterprising attack. But there is an easy way to beat any Viper setup and push onto a site with no trouble. Viper's orb and wall can only last a set amount of time before she runs out of fuel and has to recharge. Once it's down, that's the cue for you to make your move. Run into sight guns blazing, and there's only so much a Viper can do against a full onslaught with no smokes to hide behind. Finally, Yoru can be a tricky agent to face with his flash and teleport combinations, which really makes life difficult for players who might otherwise think they're safe from harm. The best way to beat a Yoru who seems determined to weasel his way into the backline of your team is to, well, expect it. If you notice a Yoru player getting into the habit of teleporting deep behind enemy lines, you should try and break the teleport by shooting it, or otherwise hold the TP and wait for him to materialize into your crosshair. Yorus tend to be creatures of habit, and once you know where they're going, it's just a case of lying in ambush. And that wraps it up for our list of 1 tip to counter every agent. Drop any tips of your own down in the comment section down below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more useful tips and tricks videos. Until next time.